What's going on, everybody? So I've been getting a lot of requests lately to do another live stream that is not just, hey, what's going on, everybody? I've been getting a lot of requests to do a live stream, and not just really a focused live stream, but a way to kind of talk with everybody in the community and talk with, some of the developers that are learning things and trying to find jobs. And I've been getting a lot of questions about jobs lately. So I figured, why don't we go ahead and address it in the live stream and help everybody out? I see we got people rolling in, so I'm going to give them a little bit of time to catch up there, and we get everybody in. What's going on? What do I do for my day job? So my day job, to answer this, hey, Ankur, thank you for asking that question, by the way. So my day job, I am a software engineer at a company called Front Door, and it's a great company. I absolutely love everything that I do there with my team. And outside of my day job, I actually teach at a boot camp at night. It's a really low paying, more of a volunteer position kind of situation, but I love all the growth that the students have gotten out of that. Outside of that, I do a ton of public speaking, whether it's at companies, Fortune 500s, boot camps, universities, colleges. That's a big portion of what I'm doing right now, and community building. So we're doing a ton of community building and giving resources to those that want it and need it most, because my goal with that is essentially helping them level up and reach that next level to become a developer and land those jobs. So thank you for the question. Hey, what's going on? Thomas, love the shirt. It's one of my favorite shirts. I wear it a lot, to be completely honest with you. Hey, what's going on, Eunice? Happy Sunday indeed, Pedro. How are you doing? I'm good. Just extremely, extremely busy lately. Got a lot of goals that I'm trying to hit. So I'm trying to find time to do everything. Right now, I'm working really hard on getting this bootcamp curriculum that I'm trying to put out online. So I've been formatting it in a way that I know how to present it, and I'm going to start releasing a ton of videos going literally from the very beginning of assuming that someone knows absolutely nothing about JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and taking on through that full journey. It's going to be very similar to the curriculum that we actually use in the bootcamp right now. And the goal with that is I know there's a lot of people all over the world that don't have access to that kind of education, and I want to make sure that it's viable and available to everyone that wants to learn. Hey, what's going on, Ken? Ron, what's going on, man? Hey, Danny, big fan. Thank you, Jacob. Nice to have you here. What languages do I code in? So originally, my original stack that I was ever hired for was Java Angular, and that is exactly what gave me my career. And from Java Angular, we actually pivoted, and now my entire stack is React and Golang. We basically rewrote our entire code base from scratch, and React and Golang is my current stack right now. But to be completely honest with you, I'll work in whatever language. I love Python. I love Python. I used to code a lot in Python. Haven't done a lot of that lately. I do a lot of JavaScript. Right now, I'm working a lot of JavaScript with the bootcamp, and Java is what we teach in the bootcamp. But I'll use whatever. Happy Sunday. What's going on? Let's go. Thank you. Love from Nigeria. Thank you for hanging out with me. Big fan. All right. Got a lot of questions rolling in here. Whoa. All right. Where do you work? Do you full stack or front end? I'm full stack. All right. Any advice for a novice developer? Keep on building things. I've got a ton of videos on my YouTube channel that you can check out on this subject, but the only way you go from becoming a beginner to an intermediate and an intermediate to an expert is one common metric between all those levels, and that's building something. I don't care what you build. I just care that you build. Build something, explore new concepts. If you learn something, try to utilize that concept in a program that you make or a tutorial, whatever you follow. Build something. I guarantee you, when you build something, your concepts become permanent. You understand that concept a lot better because you can read the theory of that concept, but until you actually put it into practical use, it's hard to conceptualize what's going to happen. And then when you get to later on in your career, you can read something and then you can figure out in your head, how it's going to fit into whatever programs you may utilize. But just build something. When you build, you're padding out your portfolio, you're getting your experience, you have projects to talk about in an interview. That's going to help you in the long term. Happy Holly. Danny, I'm confused, if you don't mind sharing. What's your ethnic background? Just curious. Yeah, I get that a lot. So my mother, she's Italian. My father, he's from Pakistan, South Asia. So I'm half South Asian, I'm half Desi, and I'm half Italian. But I was born in America, so I have this little accent, and you know, it helps me out, I suppose. What do you think of the Odin project? I love the Odin project. I think it's a great path and tool. Personally, for me, I do like Free Code Camp a little bit better, but to be honest, you can't go wrong with either one. Like I always say, I don't care where you start. I just care that you start. So you can learn anything from anywhere, but as long as you keep building upon it and using that curriculum to keep going further, then you're in the best possible situation that you could ever be in. Will it be free? I'm assuming you're talking about the bootcamp curriculum that I spoke about. And yes, that is going to be 100% free. I'm creating that not to monetize it. I'm creating that so anyone, anywhere has access to that education. Was going to start learning Python. Any suggestions about how to approach this language? Andre, great question. So Python is a great language. There's so many like places that you can start learning Python. Free Code Camp now has a Python track that you can jump on if you want to. Codecademy has a great Python track that you can jump on and really get those stepping stones out. For me, I think there's so many places to start learning Python. A couple of YouTubers like Caleb Curry, Dennis Ivey, they're all code entrepreneurs. They're all about Python. So tons and tons and tons of resources that you can use to start exploring and learning Python and growing with it. So I think that will be perfect for whatever you're trying to do. Hello. So many comments are rolling in here right away. Wow. All right. I'm trying to keep up. When is JavaScript tutorial coming? So I've got several tutorials already up there right now, but I'm going to be starting from the beginning. So give me time as I'm making all this curriculum come out. To be honest, I'm in a transition with a couple things in the background that I can't announce yet. Some big moves are happening. Some big things are in the process. But once I announce it, it's all going to make sense. But within the next few weeks, I should start releasing a ton of videos towards this bootcamp curriculum. I was actually working on, my thought process originally was record all this content over the next several months, edit it, create it, etc., and then release it in one go. But as I began thinking about it, and I know many people are impatient since I've talked about this already, that I may start releasing them in small segments and just keeping a playlist of that. And then hopefully like every week I can kind of release one video at a time. So, or, you know, however I can work it out, and that'll keep you guys going. I'm 34 years old, Black woman, immigrant with a heavy French accent in my English. I'm pretty good in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, learning React, but I'm really scared to apply for jobs. Don't be. I can tell you right now, whether your accent is French, whether you have a South Asian accent, whether you have an Asian accent, whether you have a Russian accent, whether you have a European accent. I work with some incredible, mind-blowing developers, and many of them have accents. That changes absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. What you need to make sure, if your accent is something that you're worried about, just make sure you can communicate effectively. So whether that's communicating in a way that you get your point across, whether that's communication where you can understand what the team is asking of you and you can reiterate it back, that is the most crucial and important thing that you're going to need to be able to deliver as an effective teammate. Because I think a lot of teams, they're not just hiring for a quality developer, they're actually like hiring for someone that can communicate effectively and work on a team. So make sure that even if you have an accent, you can do that and then you'll be perfect. Like you won't have anything to worry about, accent or not. Tyler, what's going on, man? Just want to say the interview with Scrimble was great. Thank you. You know, I really enjoyed the interview. I didn't know what to expect, but anytime I go out and give a talk, I try to make sure that I'm giving you the best that I know how to deliver. So whether that's tangible advice that I've basically used to help several hundred people land their first jobs in tech, or whether that's things that I've gone through myself, or whether it's the same talks that I give at boot camps and universities all over the world, I try to make sure that I'm giving you something of value that you can take away and reflect on later on. I just want to spark an idea, and I'm hoping when I spark it, you take that on and keep growing with it. Thank you for that. Feels good to see you grow. Joined your channel when it just started. Thank you. It has been growing. I want, my problem is I have a serious lack of time in my day. So I'm really trying to work on that and put out more content, more videos, because I know people like that. And the other thing that I have to really balance out is I do a ton of public speaking and talks, and I know everyone doesn't have the ability to attend those talks. So I try to work some of that content into my channel to make sure that if you never had that luxury to attend a talk, that you can, but or at least get some tidbits. But at the same time, I have to balance it, like how much of a video do you want to watch and keep it entertaining at the same time. I try to do something what I call edutainment, right? I want to educate you. I want you to be able to take actions from what you learn, but I want you to enjoy it, because if you're enjoying it, you're learning something, right? If you're not enjoying it, you're probably going to, fade out, not pay attention and things like that. And it's the same balance I try to keep with my students. Right now, we're in the final stretch with my students, and many of them are about to graduate. We're just like weeks away, and they've really come far. And that has been probably the one factor in their education that, since I've been teaching them, is how can I make this enjoyable, but how can I make it practical? Because a lot of times you learn things and you're like, why am I wasting my time with this? Or, this isn't really getting to me. So I want to bridge that gap of education and you understanding why this is something that is important within your life, but also I want to explain it in a way where it's like, this isn't an arduous task and a struggle to learn. This is something that I'm really enjoying putting these pieces together. So that's the balance that I'm working on right now. Any good Golang tutorials out there? There's a lot of stuff on Golang. Todd McLeod, he's on Twitter and Udemy. I like several of his courses. You know who's great? Kevin. If you look him up online, let me look him up right now. It's Kevin. Trying to remember his username. But if you look up on Twitter, there's Kevin something. And the other day, I also tweeted out a couple Golang resources that you can check out on my Twitter. One with a repo with like 3,000 Golang exercises that take you from like the beginning to the end, and you'll feel really strong with that. It's all free. You're an inspiration. Thank you. I'm glad that you feel inspired by my content. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And to be completely honest, I'm just glad that it resonates with someone somewhere and it's helping them on their journey. You seem to be so good in so many languages. My rule when it really comes to any language is a lot of the concepts, for the most part, are transferable. So when you really hone in and learn one, for example, let's say Java, and you learn object-oriented programming and you really understand like polymorphism and all that good stuff, you can kind of take those concepts and transfer them somewhere else. Like if you know Java, you can kind of transfer that to C#, and you can transfer that to Golang, you can transfer that to Python. But there's going to be some syntax and things that you got to learn. But for the most part, it's a lot easier to go from one language to another than it is to go to your very first language. That's why I kind of always really stress taking your time to understand the fundamentals, because once you understand the fundamentals, you can take that anywhere. But understanding the fundamentals is really key in that concept. Do you use C# and .NET? I do not use C# and .NET. We actually just did a C# crash course a couple of weeks ago at one of the meetups that I do, but I don't use C# professionally. But it's fantastic. I love .NET. I love C#. Nothing wrong with that. Tons of job opportunities in there. How long have you been coding? A little over 3 years. I'm from Pakistan too. That's awesome. Should I do one thing at a time? I mean, I want to be full stack, or should I do both backend and front end simultaneously? I keep forgetting things. I think you should really own one and then add complements to that. Meaning, when you go to dinner, right? Your dinner is always, you have a main dish. Let's say it's a chicken dish, right? So chicken is the main part of your dish. Then you start adding sides to complement it. Really own one language and then start adding complementing sides, because then you'll become valuable in that. So for me, my main language was Java. And then I started adding complements. I started adding SQL. I started adding Angular. I started adding, all the things that come with it. And then it made me my full stack. Now, you don't necessarily need to be full stack. You can be front end. You can be back end. It just depends on your local market and where the opportunities lay and lie. But I do think it's better to get good and proficient at one and then add to the rest. So for me, I really, really think you should focus on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on your front end. And when you get really, really good at that, then you can start exploring the back end and adding something there. And then you can figure out how to combine them both together. So own one, then go to the next. What are your views on bootcamps like Coder Foundry? So this is a topic and a question I get a lot. And I would get it because I do teach at a bootcamp, right? I think there are many bootcamps that are absolutely terrible. One prime example, and people may get mad, I don't care, Lambda. I think Lambda is a very bad bootcamp. I think they exist to try and get your money. They try to give you as much as they can to get you past that deadline where you can't rescind the ISA. and then they drop you off at the next bus stop. Like they used to have like hands-on mentors, and now they take students to be the mentors. Like, why wouldn't you have people that are proficient in language being mentors when you're charging $20,000, $30,000? Now, there are some boot camps that are incredible, that go above and beyond to ensure that their students are getting value, that they're actually understanding these concepts, that they're getting the support they need. And for me, I think the only time you should really consider a boot camp is when you need that rigorous schedule, when you need that constant support, and you need that kind of, support system feedback and people being basically on top of you to learn those things. And a coding bootcamp like Coder Foundry is great at that. I have not heard anything bad about the Coder Foundry curriculum. I know that they go above and beyond. I personally know Bobby Davis Jr. and Kevin Dowell that do that program, and they are incredible at what they do. You walk into a full system. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. Now, personally, I will say this, and I think they'll agree with me on this, that you can learn all of their things that they teach online for free. But when you need that added support, you need that alumni factor, you need that network to tap into, and you need the hands-on learning, you can't go wrong with the bootcamp either. What do you think about competitive programming? I think competitive programming, God, there's so many messages that I just realized. I'm trying to catch up. Combined with all three channels, I'm streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter right now, and combined, it's like 140 people. What do I think about competitive programming? I think it's a great way to set yourself up for understanding data structures and algorithms. I think it's a great way to also showcase your coding abilities to prospective companies. And I think at the end of the day, even though we know the interview process is slightly broken, data structures and algorithm questions are the basis of pretty much any coding interview you go into, whether it's front end or back end. So if you're proficient in that, you're just getting a leg up on the competition to pass pretty much any coding interview you come to. So there's nothing wrong with it. And to be completely honest, competitive programming is going to make you a better developer in certain ways. You'll understand in-depth levels of programming at that point, so you can't go wrong with that. How many great projects do I need to put on my resume when I don't have any experience except my software engineering master's degree? I think you're looking at this wrong. I don't think the quantity matters. The quality does. You can have one or two solid, like rock solid projects that will do all the talking for you. You don't need 50 or 100. You need one or two. But these need to be projects that literally showcase your command of the language. They showcase your ability to grab hold of an interview when you're talking about it. But the bigger thing with that is you need to showcase all your talents in there. So if you're trying to become a full stack developer, you need to be able, that project needs to show Java, it needs to show SQL, it needs to show your ability to tap into the front with a framework, or like, for example, Angular, because Java Angular is a very, very common stack. That project needs to show all of that. And that is something you can talk about in an interview. And if that's the kind of job you're going for, you're going to kill it. Zach Wilson, one of my students, amazing human being. Make sure you guys give him a follow. Great guy. Yes, I always stopped learning my theory. I always stopped to learn the theory first. Correct. What do you think about OSCP? And is it worth it if you already have OSCP? Is OSCP? I mean, I guess it depends on your local market and what they're looking for. I don't necessarily think you need it if you have OSCP, though. Have no confidence of actually getting a job as a developer with no schooling background and trying the self-taught route. What are the odds of getting anywhere? Every job that I was offered 6 jobs in tech before I ever accepted my first. Every job that I was ever offered wanted 4 to 5 years of experience, and they wanted a degree. I had neither. My background was frying chicken in a gas station. I think there's a lot that goes into this, and I cover so much of this on my YouTube channel. But the bigger thing on this spectrum is you need to think about what you're bringing to the table. You also cannot get caught up in certain things. Meaning, if you see a job ad that you match 50% of it, but you don't match the other 50, apply. Do you know the main languages that they're looking for? Apply. It doesn't necessarily matter if you're missing some of the random things that they're looking for. Just make sure you're covering the basics and apply. Best case scenario, they offer you a job. Worst case scenario, you're in the exact same position if you didn't apply, right? But at the very least, Maybe they give you an opportunity to come in there and show how much value you could possibly bring to the table. Because if you bring value, they're going to bring a checkbook. It's as simple as that. No company in the history of the world has ever turned down a surefire bet to make money. So just apply. But the other thing is, really, really, really maximize your LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is probably one of the most underutilized tools that many developers ignore until it's too late. That will be your key in a big, big way. A very strong and thought out and powerful network will bring you more opportunities than anything you could ever imagine. Highly, highly recommend that. Hey, Leo, what's going on? Thanks for the Q&A. What do you think is the hardest part of landing the first job after a decent portfolio and projects? So I think the hardest thing, especially for a beginner, is the coding interviews. And I will be completely honest with you. The first one the first coding interview I ever was faced with, it was like a slap in my confidence. I didn't really expect it, to be completely honest with you. I hadn't really studied anything about data structures and algorithms at that point. And it took me so long to even comprehend what the questions were asking. That was a real tough thing to get past. But I'm grateful for that because it showed me kind of what I was lacking to be marketable in the marketplace. So I took all that it was requesting and asking, and I made sure I honed my skills. So the next couple of interviews I went into, I was really killing it. So preparing for coding interviews, preparing to control the interview. I'm a very big believer in controlling that interview. If you go into an interview, you need to be able to kind of push the interviewer off that like predestined set of cookie cutter questions that they always ask. Like, what's your strong suit? What's your weak points? Why do I need to incriminate myself? Why do I need to give you ammunition against myself? I don't want you to do that. I don't want to give you that. So instead, what can I do to make you see my strengths? Let me redirect you to where I'm strongest, and you're going to end up falling in love with my attributes that I can bring to this position. Let me get a drink over here. What languages can I speak? Non-programming. So I speak a little bit of Arabic. I speak Urdu. I speak Hindi. Speak a little bit of Korean, probably just enough to get myself in trouble. But I am working on Spanish in a big way, especially in the American market. There are tons of opportunities for people that speak Spanish, and it's very widely spoken here, so it can't hurt. And I've been really trying to learn Spanish so I can teach it to my son. And I think Spanish is a great language. It always inspired me. Thank you. I appreciate that. How much JavaScript knowledge do I need to become a front-end developer? Do I need master JavaScript in order to apply for jobs? No. I do think you need to be proficient. I do think you need to be able to do things, but especially for your first job, everybody's going to know that there's going to be a learning curve in your position. But I do think you need to really understand how the DOM works. I think you need to understand how you can control things and manipulate data. And I think that will become a very, very big portion of what you do. And especially like if you're going for a front-end position, that's going to be a big part of it. So definitely designing some nice looking things and making them look good, but making sure that they're functional. So I think that's going to be the big key. But you don't need to be a master at it. You just need to know enough to pass a coding interview. Because I can tell you right now, like I've been learning JavaScript for almost 4 years now, and I feel like I still scratch the surface. There's so much to learn in JavaScript. It will never stop. So just to kind of get rid of that illusion, you'll never stop learning JavaScript. Every year there's new additions, there's new changes. You're constantly going to be learning it, but you don't need to be a master. Rashad, what's going on? Hey, Danny, good day to you. Can't wait to see your React Go link video. Thank you. What do you think about Shopify themes and app development? I think there's a ton of money in Shopify. To be completely honest with you, there's a whole market and a good YouTuber that talks about this coding phase, phenomenal human being. If you're not following him, fix that. But he has a whole course on Shopify, and Shopify pretty much is a great subsect. There's especially like if you're trying to do things like SaaS as a software as a service, that's a perfect way to do it. So tons of money in there. You ever think about doing LinkedIn review with Bobby from Coder Foundry? I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I don't know if that's really his forte. I feel like right now the current LinkedIn series, it's helped several hundred people land their first jobs in tech. And if you haven't watched the LinkedIn series, check out the playlist on my YouTube channel. 4 episodes. It'll change your entire LinkedIn career and trajectory. But I think for where it is right now, it's solid. And that's why I haven't been doing any more LinkedIn reviews. Number one, I just don't have the time. But number two, I feel like that series alone is more than enough content to get you set up to thrive and shine in LinkedIn. Is a portfolio with 4 projects along with Treehouse Python tech degree and Udacity full stack nano degree sufficient to land a job or a bootcamp would give a better chance of landing a job. I think that's more than enough. I think it depends on what the 4 projects are, right? Are they quality projects, or is this like we're talking about like a to-do list application? Because that's the other thing too that I see with tons of beginners. They do these YouTube tutorial kind of projects and like, oh, I got these projects. You need to do something a little bit more substantial. But if you have 4 like really quality projects, that's probably set you up for success. And if you're still having problems landing something, I think you probably need to look at your resume, your LinkedIn especially, and your portfolio site, and make sure that they're optimized to the level that you need them to be. Danny, any upcoming LinkedIn reviews videos? So I'm not doing those anymore. I think the LinkedIn series by itself stands really strong right now, but I may do something in the future just to help out some people. But if you really need some LinkedIn help, I have my LinkedIn services. You can kind of check that out. The link is in not in this video description. I add nothing to this one. But if you check out some of my other videos, you'll see the links in the description to kind of book my services for a LinkedIn review if it helps you out. All right. Do developers survive after 15, 20 years of experience? What is their course of action? I mean, yeah, why wouldn't they survive after 20 years of experience? Maybe you need to re-ask that question in a way that it makes more sense, because if you have 20 years of experience, you can choose wherever you want to go, essentially. I agree with Jesus. What's going on, KG? Yep. My first LinkedIn Live. What's going on, Ricky? Welcome. How do I know that a job is going to make me happy? I mean, for me, I have like certain criteria that I'm looking for, but I guess like if we're getting deep with it, you really don't, right? Part of it is you interviewing that company the same way that they're interviewing you. You make sure that they're trying to hit certain metrics that you're looking for. But at the end of the day, you're never going to really know if something's going to make you happy until you're really in the mix of it. I know when I was looking for a job, I had certain things that I was looking for. I was looking for mentorship. I was looking for a solid team. I was looking for great human beings to work with. I was looking for learning resources and things like that. Those were kind of the metrics that I set out that I wanted to ensure that I was going to get no matter where I went. That's why I was kind of selective and picky about where I was going. But normally, you can ask several questions in an interview and you can kind of get a feel for what kind of environment it is. But the other thing too is use LinkedIn and reach out to developers that work there. Find out, like, are you actually content? Are you happy? Does the company really support you on all your endeavors and goals that you're chasing after? If the answer is yes, then that's a fantastic company. If the answer is no, you may want to check somewhere else. How is Nest.js? I'm not familiar with Nest.js. If you're talking about Next, that's something else. Love the shirt. Thank you. It's one of my favorites. Dinesh, hey Danny, I'm currently a junior software QA on a project. Awesome. And I know HTML, CSS. I need to learn JavaScript and Angular in 6 months. Do you think it's possible? Absolutely. I don't think you're going to be an expert in 6 months, but it's definitely possible within 6 months to go from not knowing JavaScript and Angular to learning it. And if you really need some help there, there's tons of YouTube tutorials. There's tons of Udemy courses. Brad Traversy has a great Angular course, and it's like $10, so you can't go wrong there. But even Angular, their docs are really solid. How to choose a tech stack? For me, my opinion on this is learn the demand of your local market, because if you can get a job locally, then you can look anywhere else. So look at your job board ads, look at what jobs are coming, what jobs are going, and see what jobs are sticking around. Because if they take too long for it to be filled, you can kind of figure out this is a stack that most people aren't hiring for. Look at the ones that are coming and going. Like, is Python coming quickly and then leaving quickly and then coming with more ads? That means it's very in demand in your market. Then I would learn that. But also find out the companies that you want to work for and reach out to the developers there. They'll definitely tell you what they're working on and what languages, and you can kind of get a consensus of these are the companies I want to work for and this is what they're learning and working on. That's exactly what I want to learn. Walker, for those that don't know, Walker is like my brother, man. He lives in Memphis. What's appropriate to post on LinkedIn in relation to your progress and experience? Completed a project or implemented a new module in work? Like, oh, I added authentication, or no. Those are the perfect kinds of things to post. The thing with LinkedIn, you need to be very focused on the kinds of things that you're posting, because hiring managers don't want to look at you as, oh, this person has so much to learn, their liability. Showcase your strengths and things that you've accomplished. So if you're talking about like, hey, I had this project and I decided to refactor code and add authentication to make it much more valuable and safe, that is a perfect thing to talk about on LinkedIn. They would eat that up. But the other thing with not only just hiring managers eating that up, other developers would absolutely love reading that kind of content as well. And it brings the entire developer lifecycle around you. You want to have developers around you. You want to have hiring managers around you. Bring them both together and you can have more opportunities to land somewhere. Because even if a hiring manager doesn't pay attention to you, developers can often add referrals and refer you to the company they work at if they see that you're valuable as well. Specific question, but how can I tell if I'm good enough with JavaScript to make the transition to frameworks? I think that's a very subjective question, but I think if you can control the DOM effectively, and if you can manipulate data, then you can definitely jump to a framework. And for some people that I've even talked to, they've jumped to frameworks even before they jumped into JavaScript. But I think it just depends on you, because if you understand the DOM, I think you're going to be safe with React and Angular. Finally, I decided to commit to something I enjoyed doing and signed up front for a front-end dev Udemy course. Congratulations! It's the beginning of a journey. You're going to make a lot of strides. You're going to make a lot of progress. Hopefully, you really enjoy the process. Oscar, phenomenal human being, by the way. 110%. Took me a week to be able to get into trouble with JavaScript because of my past programming. Using the culinary skills to explain coding. I love it. Man, there's so many messages that I'm trying to catch up on. All right, which stack can you recommend for great job opportunities? I don't think there's any one stack. I will say, I released a video on my YouTube channel, top 7 languages to learn in 2021, and I took into effect of the salaries, the job opportunities, and overall like industry. So I highly recommend checking that out. And it goes into way more in depth about the potential job opportunities. But I think what really matters is your local market, because, for example, the stack that I ended up going with was Java Angular, but in Memphis, Tennessee, C# is king. But the companies that I wanted to work for use Java, so that is why I took that path. But I think there's certain areas where C# dominates and there's no other language, and then there's certain areas where Python is king. It really depends on where you live to answer that question specifically. And the way you're going to get that answer is talking to other developers in your area, but also the job section. Check out the job ads. I appreciate your response. Thank you. I got a CS minor that focused on C and C++, which most do, but I heard backend jobs are harder to get, so I'm focused on learning more front end. I actually think it's reversed. I think front end is harder to get than back end, but I don't think it's harder in terms of difficulty. I think it's harder in terms of how many people have learned front end and they're trying to land that role, and how many people have avoided back end. But with that being said, there's tons of opportunities. You just need to really find what works for you and what you're passionate about. For me, I'm not super into front end. I genuinely enjoy back end 10 times more. I enjoy the analytical and the logical part of coding, but there's some people that really enjoy the actual like building of the front end, and they even like exploring UI and UX and things like that. I think front end, there's a ton that goes into it. You don't even necessarily need to be a good designer to be in front end. I definitely can't design anything. I'm terrible at that kind of stuff. A lot of times I outsource that work and I'll pay someone to design it just so I have a good looking website. But front end, there's a ton that you can do. Thoughts on General Assembly? I think General Assembly is pretty decent. There may be some better options, but for the most part, GA is great. And especially if you're in a place like, for example, New York, GA is pretty much king. What is the best way to find a mentor? I think the thing with mentors is people look for the label that this person is my mentor. In reality, I think most mentors end up coming from a non-traditional relationship, meaning I've had so many mentors that never knew they were my mentor. I don't have one mentor. I have a combination of many that help me on my journey. And a lot of them you'll find at meetups and places like that. You need people that you can throw ideas off of and get advice on, and they will tell you which way to go. And right now with Twitter, you can have a ton of mentors that you can kind of tweet at or join in their conversations and get all that valuable feedback back from. It doesn't necessarily need to be that hard-hitting, like confirmed line of thought that this person is my mentor, this person is my mentee. Just use whatever communication levels that you can and gain that feedback. It's hard. It's really hard to have someone invest a ton of time into somebody for free, getting nothing from it, and then saying like, I'm going to mentor you 3 hours a week, every single week. It's a lot to ask of somebody. So sometimes 5-minute, 10-minute intervals are great. Another thing, if you really need like hands-on learning, one great place is codementor.io. You can pay like $10 to get 20 minutes of senior software developers' time. And, you can kind of like go over like your code. They can give you advice and things like that. And I used a lot of that when I was learning how to code. And I've even used some of that like recently when I was learning Golang. I highly recommend that. That's a great resource. Have you completed any Udemy courses? Yep. So I'm a very big believer in buying and finishing as opposed to buying a ton and touching none. I don't think this is Pokemon. We don't need to collect them all. I'd rather you do 1 or 2 or 3 Udemy courses to completion and actually do the projects in there and have something to show for it in an interview, as opposed to, collecting a bunch, spending a bunch of money and doing nothing. You buy 50 courses, you spend $500 or so, and you got nothing to show for it, where you could buy 2 and spend $20, $30 and actually have something tangible to take back with you. I think it's very obvious which route you should take, but I think we get distracted. I think sometimes we do the beginning, we're excited, and we have that that real motivation, like, oh, I'm going to learn this thing. But, motivation has an expiration. It expires. And you need something to take its place once that motivation expires. And that's going to be, your discipline in the action, your will to continue, and your idea that this is going to be more valuable down the road. So I think you need to really be disciplined in that. And that's going to be your path to success. Danny, I should do an interview with you. I got my first job through LinkedIn, and 6 months later got a FANG recruiter in my inbox. Wesley, I remember Wesley. Wesley, man, yes, we absolutely should. You know what? And I think you knew this was coming. Screenshot time here. That looks good. Hold on, let me try that again. Here we go. That looks way better. Thank you, Wesley, for that screenshot. But yeah, I mean, we could definitely do an interview. I have no problem. Tweet at me and let's get at it. Nicholas, what's going on? Nicholas Kerrigan, phenomenal human being. Absolutely love this person. Great person. Whoa, I got a super chat. I'll get to that in a second. I found the community with my bootcamp, Zach being one of my students, had been very helpful. I made friends, learned resources I might not have known about for a long time. All right. Object-oriented programming versus functional. So I do like object-oriented programming, but I think, especially with development, it doesn't need to be one or the other. I think we could take important principles from both and we can make the best out of it. But I also think being a good developer is adapting to what your team really wants and needs out of you. And I mean, at my team, we're all about OOP. So Kyle Torres, thank you for the super chat. I genuinely appreciate that. You're phenomenal, man. I'm learning on Udemy, Colt Steele, phenomenal instructor. Should I build projects by myself during or finish the entire course? I think you need to do both. And here's the thing. When you follow a tutorial, I don't think it necessarily needs to be like, oh, this tutorial did this, so I'm going to do it exactly that way. The real learning comes when you alter it. So, for example, did the tutorial teach you how to make a cat app? Make a dog app. Did they teach you how to do like a car reservation system? Do one for houses. The basic structure is going to be the same, but you're going to have to make subtle changes that you may have to research on how to do it. You're going to have to really think that process through. And when you do that, that is when you're really learning and you understand what you're doing. That will be your biggest key to understanding those concepts and really taking it further. So do your tutorials. When you build a project, make another iteration of it by yourself without the hand holding and just see what happens. That also helps you get more bang for your buck out of the tutorial. It gives you more for your GitHub as well. But I think that's where you're going to really find yourself getting into that groove and learning those new concepts. Thank you for that super chat, Kyle. You're phenomenal. Abdullah Omar. My mind has already left the place where I currently work at. Okay. I told them that I want to quit, but they proposed me a raise and shifted me to another department. But by thinking about it, it makes me sick. That's the kind of trauma I faced. But they asked for a second chance. What should I do? I mean, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think you should quit until you find something else. And if you're really that like upset about it, definitely be active towards finding something else. But it doesn't hurt having a paycheck come in while you look for something else. So don't be so crass and fast to jump ship, because you don't know how long it's going to take you to find that next role. Stick around, find that next job, and you'll be fine. I actually finished his remastered course and learned so much. I didn't do the projects, but built my own project every time. That's great advice. Michael Watts. Michael, I love the new profile picture. That looks fantastic. Just want to say thanks. The LinkedIn revamp has landed a few interviews next week. Yeah, buddy. That's incredible. Let's see. That is incredible. And to be honest, that profile picture looks like straight money. Let me save this one for me. I love doing these live streams and we get these kind of messages. It's fantastic. And then where was that one that from Wesley? Did I lose it? Here we go. But Wesley, yeah, we're gonna get together. All right, let me go back down here. So for those that don't know, you can check out Michael's profile. He actually did my LinkedIn service, and you can see how incredible it looks now. He's really put in some effort to make sure that it looks phenomenal. But the biggest thing is he's getting those interviews. That's what this is all about. What do you think about Free Code Camp? Is it worth going through the whole curriculum? I love Free Code Camp. Free Code Camp, if Free Code Camp didn't exist, I'd probably still be frying chicken in a gas station. Free Code Camp was the biggest key for me, learning how to code, getting out there. But I also think this, for any learning resource, you should never, ever, ever just depend on one. I think you should be absorbing material from multiple resources, because you're going to learn so much through that process. So even if you're going through Free Code Camp, still, have a Udemy course on the side, still have some YouTube videos on the side, get all that wealth of knowledge, because that's where you're really going to grow. That's good advice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hello all. What's going on, Tariq? All right. Any tips for someone who has a C++ background who wants to get a job in the industry from a full stack dev focused on front end first? You're going to have to go from C++ to something else, because while C++ is awesome, I love C++, most jobs are not hiring for that. They're hiring for something else. But you can get some jobs that are just working on, things besides web dev, like software and things like that. But it's still probably not going to be in C++, just being honest about it. But I do think to go from C++, you can go to Golang relatively easy, since it has a lot of same concepts. You can go to Rust, but there's not a lot of Rust opportunities, unfortunately, right now. You can go to Java with C++, and that's a really easy transition. C# as well. So I think you've got that whole backend set up for you. Hope that helps. All right, good advice. Thank you. Just started JavaScript part, and I'm not convinced that I know CSS well enough. I will say this. For the most part, you need to know the basics of CSS, like your paddings, your margins, your positions, all that good stuff. You need to learn all that. But for higher things, you can always Google it later on down the road and, iterate and get better. But I really feel like, at least for me, CSS really clicked hard when I started combining it with JavaScript. That's when I really started understanding things. So you may have to do that. You're an inspiration. Thank you. I appreciate everyone saying that. So much love today. Thank you. I try to read as many tweets as I can. Honestly, I'll be completely honest with you. When I get about 500 a day, give or take, replies. So it's extremely hard for me to keep up. I genuinely make an effort to try, because I remember how it was when I would try to reach out to, bigger Twitter people. So I try really hard. But, at the end of the day, like I have a full-time job and a lot going on as well. But I definitely make an effort. Do you suggest a template for a portfolio make from scratch? I say either or. I don't care. So my rule with the portfolio is it doesn't necessarily need to be code heavy. You can absolutely use a template. The key with the portfolio is it has to look good. Let me explain this train of thought for you, right? 99% of hiring managers have never written a line of code a day in their life. Simple as that. Most of them trust something that looks good. They don't know the details behind it. But when they see that it looks good, they'll pass that portfolio on to a higher decision maker for the role that is technical, and they're the ones that want to see your project. So make sure the portfolio looks good, whether you pay someone to make it, whether it's a template, or whether you make it yourself. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it just needs to look decent. I need to learn JavaScript in 3 months. Is it possible? I mean, you could learn the basics, but it's going to be really, really hard. But with that being said, I mean, anything is possible within the realm of reality, but I mean, that kind of time limit, it's tough. How negatively will a year of having no work affect your ability to find a job? I don't think it's as big of a problem as it used to be because of the pandemic. So I think that has helped many people. With that being said, it's better to avoid it if you can. But if it does come up, just be ready to explain it and say, maybe you lost your job because of COVID, or maybe you lost, potential opportunities because the whole world was on lockdown. But I think for the most part right now, a lot of hiring managers are forgiving for that. As well as it affects your abilities as a programmer. As long as you keep things going, I think you're fine. Slideshow of Danny's success screenshots whenever I can. Whoa, all these messages. Hold on here. We got a super chat. Can you speak to the mentality necessary? And thank you for the super chat, by the way, Danny Bunny. I genuinely appreciate that. Can you speak to the mentality necessary to exceed in the software development world? I know you spent a long time getting to where you are now. This is a really interesting question. I think the mentality that you need to have is you will never have all the right answers. I have no problem telling someone I don't know. But if given enough time, I will do the research and I will come back with the correct answer. There's been many, many times where I've been stumped by questions. I don't know it all. I really don't. I try to be as informed as I can. I try to do the research. Like if someone asks me a question, the first thing I'll do is pop up on Google to at least get a basic understanding if I don't know it. But I think it's imperative to know as a developer, you will never know it all. And I think one of the biggest problems is some beginners try to know it all and they try to exude that feeling when they're in an interview, and interviewers can see right through it. But not only that, if you ever meet a developer that thinks they know it all, they should basically quit at that point. You'll never know it all. I know developers with 25 years of experience that don't know it all, and I mean world-class developers. We are constantly on an evolution of learning when it comes to development. There's no way around that. So understanding that you'll never know it all, understanding that to be a developer is to be on a lifelong journey of learning. It never stops. But also understanding it's valuable and imperative to be a valuable communicator on a team. I think if you have those three things, you'll go very far in your career. Thank you for the super chat. I genuinely appreciate that. You're awesome. There's so many messages that I'm trying to catch up on. I'm gonna have to skip some of these messages. There's just so many. Let's see. Let me try and find some good ones. Mentorship has been my biggest problem. What is a big way to approach a senior developer, experienced developer to mentor you? Again, I kind of spoke about this earlier, but mentors do not need to have a label like I'm your mentor, you're my mentee. The thing is, you have to understand every single day of the week, someone decides to learn programming for the very first time. It's impossible that you're going to have mentors for every single person learning. But the other thing too is when you mentor someone, this is a free thing. Like no one's paying for that. If you want to pay for a mentor, codementor.io is a great example. It's a website where you can hire mentors. But the other thing is, right now with social media, use that to your advantage. You can literally start tweeting at somebody a question or just put a question out into the Twitter world and just see where the answers come rolling in. Like I have so many mentors that never knew they were my mentor, and I use that to my advantage because I think if you want someone to put that label there, it's impossible for that to thrive and happen. But if you ask them a question, you have someone that you could throw answers off of, that's great. But also find communities. There's tons of Discord communities. I have a Discord community, like almost 4,000 developers in there. No one is going to say, hey, I'm going to mentor you. But it's a perfect place to throw a question out, get that feedback, valuable answers, also do code reviews and things like that. That's going to be more valuable than really having a one-on-one mentorship because it's almost impossible to get that. I've never had a specific, strict one-on-one mentor, but I've had many mentors where I can go to them for advice, feedback, message them a couple times, things like that. And I think that's what you should be looking for. Let's see. Should a web developer buy UI software like Sketch or Figma? I mean, you don't have to buy it. Figma is free. Like, you can, a lot of those softwares are free that you can use, so you don't have to buy it. Have to get a sriracha shirt for dinner because of your shirt. I love the shirt. Thank you. Ever thought of creating your own language? I mean, you can, but I think in the realm of reality, there are so many options out there that are probably better than whatever you're going to make. Might as well go with what's already tried, true, and what the market has. What are the basic algorithms to learn for a job interview? Honestly, I think if you cover linked list, reversing a binary tree, and basic data structures, I think that's going to be, and understanding Big O, you're going to be in great shape. Because I think even from my own experience and going through a couple of FANG interviews, like that's pretty much where it's at. Minimum time needed to learn JavaScript to get a job. There is no time. I mean, it really depends on you. I can tell you right now, I know people that have landed jobs in 3 months. It really hasn't happened for me. It took me a lot longer. It takes most people a lot longer. And I think these kind of things, when you do like, what's the minimum time? What's the least that I can bring to the table to get a job? I think that's the wrong mindset. I think it's, what can I learn to be the most valuable person that I can be? Because if you go in with the minimum time, maybe you're not going to find a company that wants the minimum viable product. They want someone that can bring a little bit more. I don't think you should cap your learning. I think you should be open to whatever. And as you learn, actively apply for opportunities and make sure that you can, at least pass a coding interview. I think you should be able to honestly make a project that is something on your own. And I think you'll be in great shape. Please refer me kindly to some good Java materials. Java, mooc.fi/en is a free course by the University of Helsinki. Angie Jones is the world's first woman Java champion, and she has a complete free course on Java, and you can get it from her Twitter. Highly recommend that. Really, really great stuff. Tim Bulchalka has some really incredible Udemy courses on Java. Highly recommend those as well. Is front end a good field? I mean, yeah, there's tons of jobs and tons of money in it. Please don't spam questions because I'm going to see them. So, just give me time. I'm a fresh information graduate with 3.6 GPA, no prior experience, no internships, and I have a really hard time landing my first job. What is your advice? My advice, 4 steps to landing a job in tech. Have to have a great LinkedIn. You have to maximize LinkedIn. I don't care where you are in the world. LinkedIn matters. 90 million monthly users on LinkedIn are hiring managers of businesses, and recruiters. You need to stand out where they hang out. It's as simple as that. Make sure you're optimizing your online presence. Step number 2, portfolio site. It needs to look good. Hiring managers need to see that. Step number 3, portfolio items. This is where you show your abilities in the language. Step 4, good resume. It has to match the keywords. You need to be altering your resume depending on the job you're applying for. Having one resume that you mass apply is the worst thing possible. You need to match keywords because most companies have a software called ATS that automatically tracks those keywords to see if it's even worth the hiring manager reading it. So make sure you're optimizing that resume, and that should put you in good shape. There's a lot of free Udemy courses for almost any language. Pick one and complete it. Absolutely agree. Let me go down a little bit. Do you know any good strategies to fix bugs during coding? What do you do when you're facing a coding problem during your program? How do you resolve it? So the normal way that I debug something that I'm trying to fix, set breakpoints in your code. So if the code is in, for example, JavaScript, I want to console log in several places where I think the code may be having a problem, but I also want to console log it in the process. So meaning, like, if let's say that somewhere on my home page that there's an error happening, I'll console log several locations as it loads out and see, like, okay, did the first portion of this code, did it execute? It did, cool. So I know the bug can't exist there. Did the second portion execute? I check for that console log statement. It did, cool. Okay, and then I can kind of narrow that down. But breakpoints are a great way as well. As you step through it in the process, you can kind of see, like, okay, this section checked out, this section didn't. It should probably be somewhere within this block. That should probably help you out a lot. Oh, I like your energy sub. Thank you. I appreciate that. I try to bring a lot of energy to the table. Thank you, Robert. Should I get specialized in front end or back end or get into full stack? I think, you should focus on one, and then when you feel proficient, you can move to the next. I do personally, I like the full stack approach because I think it opens you up to all the opportunities. So if someone needs a backend developer, you're there. If someone needs front end, you're there. But I also think knowing a little bit of both helps you be more effective, because if you're a front end developer and you understand how it ties into the backend, you can make a great product. I don't think necessarily to be a good front end developer, you need to be a genius at backend, but you at least need to know the basics of how it works. And I think that'll be a lot better for you in your career. But I also think as the industry is changing, I think it's better to know backend just for career growth. Hey Dan, how do I reduce my anxiety before a job interview? That's tough, to be completely honest with you. It's tough. I think job interviews are pretty much going to be something that everyone's nervous about no matter what. But I do think one thing that you can do that will really help out is having like bullet points of things that you know you want to talk about that show you in a great way. It helps you feel more confident. So like even like if you have a couple of bullet points written down on a piece of paper that you take into the interview with you, and then you can kind of, keep it in the palm of your hand and put it back into your pocket or something, that can help you feel like you can control it a little bit better. But also practicing them will let you feel more confident in your answers. Super chat. I already answered that. Cool. Thank you again for the super chat. Thank you. Solo Learn is very good. Solo Learn is great. I do think you need additional resources with that, but yeah, Solo Learn is pretty good. I'm proficient in Java, DS Algo. What job should I apply to? Java jobs. Like if that's where your proficiency is, then apply to those. Wesley, how do you do with no bootcamp? I mean, you can learn without a degree of bootcamp. All right, let me scroll all the way down. Hey, what's going on? I'm trying to catch up. Code modular. Okay, probably missing that. All right. That is the link to my Discord. If you can click on that, fantastic. I highly recommend it. Send those screenshots my way. I'll build you a slideshow. Honestly, at this point, there's so many screenshots with messages like that, and I always appreciate them. I love to keep them, but I probably got hundreds at this point. All right. And I mean, I post them too. Portfolio site or projects, polished, LinkedIn, Twitter. Yes. And that is the exact way Wesley got Fang recruiters now reaching out to him. That's how he got his jobs. I love it. I absolutely love it. Your advice helps a lot. Thank you, Valentin. Thank you for taking the time to answer all these questions. Thank you. How many hours should you spend? How many hours should you, I don't know why the apostrophe is there, spends if time at another job is a factor? I'm guessing that you mean how much time should you spend studying if you're working a full-time job? And I think it just depends on what you have available. I will tell you, for me, I was spending about 2 hours a day, hour and a half a day. But I realized after work, my brain was so tired that I just couldn't study anything. So I ended up learning before going to work, and I ended up retaining a lot more information. I highly recommend that route if you can. Otherwise, find the time and just give whatever you can. All right, let's see here. Nice answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. What projects do you definitely think will get someone hired as a full stack or backend? So the projects that I always talk about, honestly, and to give Bobby Davis a quote here, Bobby Davis, the founder of Coder Foundry, highly recommends a bug tracker, and I think that's a great project. I do think you need to have a couple projects in your arsenal. I think you need to have one project that communicates with the database, especially if you're going for full stack, that communicates with the database, a backend and a front end. And one really great project to showcase that is a user base where users sign up. And it could be something along the lines of like a social networking site kind of thing. I think that's a really great way to showcase. I also think one really great project that you can do is just something that means something to you. Because what's the point of making something you don't want to talk about? But I really think whatever project you make, it has to be something different than the average. I also think a really great project, if you're going for front end, is a restaurant site. Every portfolio needs a restaurant site. I think every portfolio also needs like a real estate site that shows like housing listings. Now, this is going to really encompass like using databases, using backend, front end, using APIs. Like there's a ton of stuff that's going to go into it. That is not like a weekend project. It's going to take a little bit longer. But if you have a database that showcases all that kind of information and you can add listings to it, that's going to be something that would really shine in the interview process. So many questions. Discord is very helpful. Thank you, John. Do I need full stack projects on my portfolio, even if I'd like to land a entry junior level front end position? I mean, no, your project should reflect kind of what you're going for. But with that also being said, it doesn't hurt. But if your ultimate goal is strictly front end, your project should reflect that. But remember, they need to really like be something that is very powerful. So someone should look at it and be like, that's an interesting looking project. But the key with all your projects should be the talking point. It shouldn't be like, oh, I made a clone of Instagram. They know what Instagram is. They're not going to ask any further questions. Make it something different that you can talk about. And to be honest, the one biggest project that I always recommend, furniture store, something very similar to overstock.com. Overstock.com has multiple SKUs across multiple categories, and it also has a shopping cart function, meaning if I click on something on the website, it goes into a shopping cart that I can purchase, etc. You don't need to finish the checkout process. Nobody's going to ever enter their information, but having everything up to that point will scream you're a qualified developer. How did you deal with imposter syndrome at your first dev job? Imposter syndrome, I talk about this a lot. I think everyone that follows me knows that I talk about imposter syndrome a lot. The biggest thing with imposter syndrome is you have to understand everyone gets it. I've yet to meet a developer at any level that hasn't had imposter syndrome. They all get it. I've met developers at Google that get imposter syndrome. I've met developers at Microsoft that give imposter syndrome. I've spoken at these companies and I've met developers that have imposter syndrome. Everyone gets it. So I think the biggest thing with imposter syndrome is understanding where it stems from. Imposter syndrome is the fear of being exposed as a fraud. It is the fear of how you would even react in that situation. And it's the fear of being inadequate for that position. So once you understand what imposter syndrome is and where it's stemming from, you can kind of control how it's going to affect you, right? So really focus on that, and I think you'll go a long way. But understand everyone gets it. You're not going to be the first person to get imposter syndrome. You're not going to be the last. I think the biggest, most valuable piece of information with imposter syndrome is if you're getting imposter syndrome, you're basically getting out of your comfort zone and you're getting better. So it's a kind of a sign that you're doing something right. I really, really agree with this. You really don't need a dedicated mentor. I've learned so much from just a few seconds of interaction with people. I can chat for 2 minutes with someone like Danny, and boom, I've learned something new. I highly recommend this and agree. Like I've gained so much just from interactions. It kind of sends me on that trajectory of where I need to go, and that I highly recommend it. Thanks again, Danny, for answering my question. No problem. Thank you. Thank you so much, Danny, for sharing your experience. You're very helpful. Thank you, LinkedIn user. How do I know if I'm job ready? I don't think you ever really know if you're job ready, but I think if you have some of the basic stuff and you can do a coding interview, apply. What's the worst that can happen? I can tell you, I got my first coding interview, like my first job interview ever. I was completely unprepared for it, and I talked about this quite a bit. My very first job interview ever, at that time, I had just started learning JavaScript. I barely knew what an array was, but I saw everybody talk about how they got a job in 3 months. And I said, I better start applying. I convinced one company to give me an interview, and I got so excited for it. I put on a suit and I was super hype about it, right? Because I put on a suit, even though it's a phone interview. But I was like, that mindset, if you prepare yourself for something like that, then, you're going to really, 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 emulate those features, right? So I put on a suit, I get ready for this interview, and they say, they schedule it for an hour, and they're like, okay, so, do you know JavaScript? I was like, yes, I know JavaScript. I'm learning JavaScript right now, and I'm working on making some projects in JavaScript, and it's great. And like, well, do you know React? And I was like, React? Yeah, I know how to React. Happy, sad, mad. What are we talking about? I was so new to JavaScript that I didn't even know what a framework was, right? But I could audibly hear like the anger, like the disdain in the lady's voice. You can hear how she went from happy to like, okay, I'm wasting my time here. And that hour interview turned into 5 minutes. But I'm grateful for that. Even though it hurt in the moment, it showed me what I was lacking for the industry as a whole. And it kind of told me what I needed to learn. I didn't know what a framework was. I knew now that was something I needed to learn. It helped me kind of pinpoint and factor in to what the rest of my learning path would be. So just start applying. Maybe the interviews go great. Maybe they'll go terrible. You'll never know until you start applying for it. But just make sure that when you're walking to those interviews, you at least you know JavaScript and you know what they're asking for, and you're not wasting their time or yours. What's your experience with freelancing versus getting a job? What are some ways to practice soft skills to help you become a better communicator? So, communication, honestly, one really great way to practice that, meetups. I'm a huge advocate for meetups. I'll always talk about meetups. I think meetups are a great resource because where else can you go where you can have people kind of look at your code and they understand what you're going through, give you valuable advice, but also that you can talk within a technical capacity. Highly recommend meetups. Now, freelancing, there's tons of ways to get freelancing opportunities. A lot of them are just businesses around you. Right now, there's tons of businesses that never had to think about having an online presence before that now have had to pivot to them. And many of them are on like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and they need a website that showcases their menu for their restaurant or even convenience store, but then links to their Uber Eats and DoorDash. Highly recommend looking at those opportunities if that's something you're trying to do as a freelancer. But I don't think Upwork is the only solution. I think even having a strong LinkedIn, I get tons of freelancing opportunities that right now, because I just severe lack of time, I outsource them all. But LinkedIn, your local community, talking to business owners around you, tons of great ways to get opportunities that way. I'm going to do a couple more questions, then we're going to call it. I'm a second-year computer science student, and I'm going to be applying for my co-op. Any advice? Kill it. I mean, apply, bring value to the table. I don't know what advice you're looking for in this situation, but make sure that you're ABL, always be learning. Keep learning. Don't ever stop. I'm trying to find, and I think I've answered these. All right, I think I answered all these. Here we go. Here's the one. Should I be picky when applying for jobs, or should I apply for every opportunity? Both. I think you should apply, but I think, again, your LinkedIn, your network will produce more opportunities for you than anything else that you do. Simple as that. I think a very, very, very valuable LinkedIn profile will go a long way because it'll do a lot of the hard work for you instead of you trying to do it yourself. I think the other thing with that too is when you have a valuable network, it keeps producing opportunities for you. But one of the great things about a LinkedIn profile that's strong is 9 times out of 10, when I need a job, I'm not applying. I'll never tell you don't apply for jobs, but I'm sending DMs and messages to hiring managers and recruiters. Like 9 times out of 10, you can see who posted a job ad. And if you can't, you can look up the hiring manager for that company on LinkedIn. Send them a message saying, hey, I saw you posted this job. Here are 3 reasons why you and I need to have a conversation, A, B, and C. I look forward to hearing from you. If they like those reasons, they're going to say, hey, that's great. Let's set up an interview. You just passed everybody else that applied for a job using a resume. Like you go straight into interview 1 at that point. And that's literally been my key for success. And I highly recommend that. All right, let me see. I'm sweating. I guess these lights are making me sweat a lot. Another great way to learn, help someone. Absolutely agree. Talk through their problems with them. Help them debug their code. You'd be surprised by how much you learn. Another thing, honestly, I'm a very, very big believer in pseudocode turns into real code. So if you don't know how to make a program or something, start breaking it down with basic English. And then you can start tackling it one item at a time. Those small wins will help you get to where you want to be. Wesley, that's a good idea. I've been thinking of jumping on a coding Discord to do that. Hey, commit your code. One of the best Discords around, in my opinion. Come jump in. We're going to be launching a couple of open source projects to kind of get the community involved in some things. I was supposed to launch one in December, but we've been kind of busy, to be honest. But we're going to be launching that really soon. I've been out of a job for 1 year due to illness. What should I put on my CV? I mean, I don't think you have to worry about that too much. I think what you need to worry about more is I'm getting back into the market. How much should a front end know before applying for jobs? I mean, you'll never know it all. I think if you feel confident in making a website, that's pretty much where you need to be, right? Like if you can make a couple projects, that's great. I think you need to be open about what you don't know. Definitely practice your interviewing skills and communication skills. And I think if you feel confident in that area, start applying. But with that being said, I think it's really imperative that you're honest with yourself and that you keep your expectations within the realms of reality. Gotta say the beard's on fleek. Thank you. You know, I try. Dang, okay. Laravel or Node.js, which do you prefer? I think it matters on your market. I think in certain markets, PHP is still thriving. There's tons and tons of jobs in it. And I think most Fortune 500 companies, they're not making any changes to that anytime soon. So if your local market has some companies that are using Laravel, learn it. Otherwise, Node.js is great. Java is great. C# is great. It really just matters where you can find opportunities. Come on, Dan, you got to tell us the secret on how comfortable you are with public speaking. Honestly, I had to learn how to do this. This wasn't something that I grew into. I've always been terrified of speaking publicly, but now I've done so many speeches that I've definitely gotten comfortable with it. And I think really one great way to do that, meetups again, kind of out of your element a little bit. But the other thing is kind of focusing on what other people like do when they speak. And I've watched a lot of speakers to kind of gauge like, how do you feel confident when you're speaking? But I think the other thing is feeling confident in your answer oftentimes helps with that. But the biggest thing of all is getting outside of yourself. There's 7 billion people on this planet. We are only big in our own minds, right? So we constantly criticize every little thing that we do, and we kind of like do it to the point of like hurting ourselves, right? Most people do not critically think about the things that we do the way we are. We are our own worst critics, but we can also be our own best coach. So try to get outside of the mindset of thinking about every little thing and just have a conversation, and go from having a conversation with one person to 4 people to 10. And then next thing you know, you feel a lot more confident speaking in front of groups of people. But just understand, more oftentimes than not, more people in the room are afraid to speak in front of others. They understand if you make a mistake or mess up, they're in the same boat. They'd probably do the same thing, right? No one is a born great public speaker. Maybe there's some outliers that are just stars, but this is something that you're just going to have to get comfortable with over time. But understand, more times than not, the people that you're speaking to are afraid to do the speaking themselves. And if you mess up, they completely sympathize and they would never hold you to it. Advice on learning algorithms of big O notation. That is something that I talk about a lot. And I think the biggest thing with that is just doing that. And there's tons of free courses out there. Even on YouTube, Free Code Camp has like an 8-hour video that covers tons of algorithms, covers big O and all that good stuff as well. But I think the only way you're really going to learn it conceptually is by doing them. And what's crazy is I think if you spent like a month on algorithms, like you'd really own that space. I know many developers that are really bad developers, but that own that coding interview process and were able to land jobs at Fang. And they were able to use Fang as a way to keep learning them. So I think you can learn it. I think right now, actually, I spent 2 hours this morning, and I've been I keep like a notebook next to me, and I was making pages of notes because I want to come out with, at least for my students, I want to come out with an easier way to understand big O and really tackle coding algorithms. But I want to break it down to someone that really is new to it. So it's something I'm working on. It's going to take me a while to really make all that material and that curriculum, but it's something I'm working on. But really, the way you're going to get better at it is by actually doing it. Should you even consider starting web development in mid-30s? You have to be like a new subscriber or something to ask that question. I didn't start learning how to code until I was after 30. I work with a 23-year-old who's a great developer. I started learning how to code from frying chicken at the age of 30. One of my great friends, he made the transition at 46, and I worked with an incredible front-end developer who is 60 years old and a woman, and she totally crushed it. You aren't late. You are right on time. I actually released a video just the other day on is it too late or are you too old to code? Highly recommend checking that out. I think it'll have the answers that you're looking for, but it is not too late. You said about communication, some of us English isn't the first language. Should we ignore to our ancient? I believe you mean accent. What is your advice? I absolutely don't think your accent is a problem. I think people with accents are very critical about that on themselves. Again, going back to what I said, we are our own worst critics, but we can also be our own best coach. Accent doesn't matter as much as effectively communicating the problem, understanding the problem, and being able to communicate the solution. I work on a team with some phenomenal developers. Maybe half of them are Americans. The other half are people that came from overseas, and they have accents. And guess what? We are an incredible team that gets things done. The accent doesn't matter. What matters is your confidence in your abilities, the confidence in the way that you speak, and the confidence in knowing what you know. That matters more than, you being a developer has nothing to do with public speaking. Like, what matters is if you're able to communicate your problems. So don't worry about your accent. It means nothing in the world of development. We have developers. I work with developers in India. Like, it doesn't matter. You can be an effective developer with an accent. Doesn't matter. Yes, and I agree with you, Wesley. Yes. Is it wrong that I want to be a JavaScript developer only? No. I mean, there's tons of JavaScript developers. I started at 47. Christopher Johnston, I know who this is. Phenomenal human being, and started at 47. Can't go wrong there. Keisha, laughing. Your favorite thing to do in your spare time, games, movies. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm a workaholic. And I don't advise that for people, but I have very, very, very big goals that I'm trying to hit. And my goals aren't necessarily for me, but my goal really is revolving around helping communities. And so a lot of my free time goes to that, if I'm going to be completely honest. But I do make time for my family. That's where a lot of it comes into. But also 2020 has been kind of hard to maintain the balance between work and life and everything else. But I do we have family movie night where me and my wife and my son, we watch a movie together, we hang out. But also, like every Saturday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., I have Among Us time where we have a private Discord of developers that play Among Us, and we just kind of hang out and do that. So I think, some games, but I'm really not like a gamer. But I do think you need to balance and find a way to kind of shake things up and really just have a moment to be human. I feel like sometimes we're always so go that we never stop to say, you know what? We're human. We're gonna have bad days. It's human it's human to have a bad day. It is human to have a mood swing. That's human. That just means we're alive, right? But I think what matters more is being happy with whatever you're doing. I love development. Like, I love everything about this field. I love tech. Like, I love talking to developers. I love communicating. I love doing my meetups. Like, we just did a meetup the other day. A C# meetup had like 170 people there. Like, I love that. Like, it's enjoyable for me. So I don't really see it as much as work as I see as just me enjoying what I'm doing day to day. Whoa, just because your beard is on fleek and because you're answering everyone for almost 2 hours. Thank you. Thank you. That is probably the best super chat. You are incredible. Thank you for that. I'm gonna screenshot that because that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Thank you for that. You are incredible. I genuinely appreciate that. Are you able to share a good tutorial for Laravel? I'll be honest with you. I'm not a PHP person. I don't know much about PHP besides the little bit of experimentation that I did in March of last year. Like, I'm not an authority to kind of give you resources on that. I will say there's a ton of materials out there. You can look anywhere online and find some stuff, but I'm probably not the person to ask on that. And to be completely honest with you, I'm really terrified of giving bad advice to people. So I'd rather tell you to try and find someone else to give it to you than me give you something bad and then you hate me down the road. I started at 41. Luke started at 41. Luke is a phenomenal human being. Are you able to make an interview queue? So are you saying, can I make an interview video? I mean, I've done, like, if you check out my LinkedIn series, I interview like 4 different hiring managers and recruiters about what they look for in candidates and things like that. And that's the one like interview series that I really, really recommend to people if they want to kind of own their space online and, be valuable. Highly recommend that. I think that's probably what you're asking about. Yeah, so I wake up at 6 a.m. and be productive for 8 to 10 hours. Then I play games in the evening to chill out. It seems to be working as well so far. As long as you feel like it's working well, you're making progress. That's perfect. That's the best thing. Balance everything, right? You have your downtime. You have your work time. I would rather you work 20 hours a week and be nothing but productive and make progress than to work 60 hours a week and make nothing. I talk to people all the time who are like, man, I've been working all day, but I feel like I'm getting nowhere. You're working in circles because what happens? A lot of people, while they're working, they got Twitter open, they got YouTube open. They're not focused on what they're doing. They're checking out random videos. Have mindful focus when you're working. When you start drifting off, take that break. If you're gonna like half work and keep yourself stressed, it's not working. So it's not worth it. For me, I'll be honest, I stick to Pomodoro techniques. I do 25-10 splits, which means for every 25 minutes, I take 10 minutes off, walk around. I literally get physically up from this area. I'll go mess with my wife, my kid. We'll talk, we'll joke a little bit. But that 10 minutes allows me to like de-rest, and I can check Twitter or whatever it may be within that time period. Everyone's like, how do I tweet so much? It's during those 10-minute breaks. Like if I get a random idea in those 10 minutes, or if I face a problem, like as I was coding that gives me inspiration for a tweet, send it out. I don't really plan that kind of stuff. It's just whatever hits me at that moment. But those 10 minutes, and when I come back, it's like those 25 minutes, it's nothing but output, production, and producing great stuff. And that helps me really hit all these milestones. Yes, so perfect. Check out the LinkedIn series. You'll love it. Just want to thank you for your advice. Follow you on Twitter as well, and you're great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you like the content. I love your energy. Well, thank you. I try to bring the energy so that way you get affected by it and you want to do some stuff. And that's kind of why I do that. I always say it's hard to make someone see your dream. Like I have a clear vision of what I want, but when I just tell it to someone, they don't necessarily see it. But if I talk with passion, if I talk with enthusiasm, you may feel and be like, you know what, let's try this thing. And then that's when you start making those action items and those moves and you feel that success. So I try to bring the energy because you may enjoy it, you may get something out of it, and it may spark that energy that you need to get where you want to go. So that's why I do it, and I'm grateful that you're feeling that way as well. Hello. Hey. Pomodoro for the win. In the 5-minute break, I do press-ups. Yeah, do something. Just get away from the computer for those 5-10 minutes. And I think that's the one problem, because a lot of times people don't get away from their workstation. So like, let's say you have a 5-minute break. I do 10 minutes. I need a little bit longer. But like they'll just open a window on their screen and they go to YouTube. They watch a couple of videos and 10 minutes is up like that, right? And they're like, well, let's take the 10 minutes. Let's push it to 20 instead. Well, let's push it. An hour goes by. Now you feel lethargic. You don't feel excited. You don't feel like you're making it doesn't work that well in the grand scheme. So I think it's very good to actually physically get up from the computer at that point, take a little lap around the house or something, go make a cup of coffee, do something to just get your mind off of what you were doing. And then when you come back, you can produce output again. I follow you on Twitter. Thank you. You smashed the talk today. Thank you. I genuinely appreciate that. Right at this point, we've been going for almost, we're getting close to 2 hours. I think this is a great place to stop. I think, I've answered a ton of questions. I'm really grateful everyone enjoyed this. I'm probably going to chop this up and share this on social media if something seems valuable. But I think at the end of the day, I hope this was a boost of energy, because tomorrow's Monday, or depending on where you are in the world, you may already be in Monday. And I think this is a great way to start this week off right, and let's make some major moves. I can't wait to see what new levels you reach. Be confident in your abilities. Make sure that you're looking forward to what you're doing, but also make sure you have more confidence in yourself. You are way more capable to do these things than you give yourself credit for. You are incredible. Realize it. I can't wait to see you on the next one. Make sure you check out my other videos. Make sure you're linked with me on social media, and make sure you're following me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm going to be releasing a lot of content there, way more to come. Twitter is growing exponentially day by day, and I love that you love the content. I could talk about this stuff all day, but I want you to check out my other videos. So check out my other videos, and I will see you on the next one.